Holy Spirit, calm my thoughts to hear God again. You are not losing your faith because your mind feels crowded. You are not drifting from God because your thoughts refuse to slow down. What you are experiencing is not spiritual weakness, it is mental saturation. There is a difference, and that difference matters more than you think. Many people believe that when their thoughts are loud, God must be distant. But the truth is far more compassionate. God is not absent in noise. He is patient within it. Your mind has been running without rest, not because you are careless, but because you have been trying to survive, to understand, to protect yourself from disappointment, uncertainty, and fear. Every thought feels necessary. Every worry feels responsible. Every inner conversation feels urgent. And yet, beneath all that effort, there is a quiet ache, a longing that logic cannot soothe, a hunger that information cannot satisfy. You want to hear God again, but your mind keeps interrupting the moment. You sit in prayer and your thoughts jump ahead. You open your heart and your fears answer first. You try to be still, but stillness feels unsafe. And so you begin to believe that something is wrong with you. That belief is the real weight you are carrying. Listen closely. God does not measure your closeness by your calm. He does not withdraw because your thoughts are racing. He understands the pressure you are under. He knows the pace of your inner world. And He is not asking you to silence yourself by force. He is inviting you to be guided into peace. The voice of God has never been competing with your thoughts. It has been waiting for you to stop defending yourself long enough to feel safe. God speaks where the heart is open, not where the mind is exhausted. And calm is not something you create. Calm is something you allow. Stay here. Do not rush this moment. You do not need more effort. You need space. And space is where God has always spoken, when your mind never rests, but your soul is still hungry. There is a deep contradiction living inside you right now. Your mind is constantly active, yet your soul feels undernourished. You think all day, process all night, and still wake up with the same heaviness. Your thoughts never seem to finish their work. They just move from one concern to the next. Planning becomes worry. Reflection becomes self-pressure. Awareness becomes overload. And while your mind stays busy, your soul quietly waits. That waiting feels like emptiness, but it is not. It is hunger. Not the kind that asks for more answers, but the kind that longs for closeness. Your soul is not asking you to fix your life. It is asking you to feel held. But the mind does not understand that language. The mind solves, controls, predicts. The soul rests, receives, trusts. When the mind dominates every moment, the soul is left unheard. This is why rest feels unfamiliar. This is why silence feels uncomfortable. Your inner world has learned to survive through constant alertness. Calm feels like letting your guard down. Stillness feels like losing control. But control has been costing you peace. Every thought you chase steals a little more attention from the place where God waits. God does not reach you through mental effort. He reaches you through availability. He is not impressed by your constant thinking. He is drawn to your openness. When your mind never rests, it is often because your heart has been carrying too much alone, and God never intended for you to carry life by yourself. You were not created to think your way into peace. Peace was designed to come from presence. The more you try to think your way closer to God, the more distant He feels. Not because He moved, but because the soul cannot be accessed through pressure. It opens through gentleness. In this moment, you're not being asked to understand God more clearly. You're being invited to stop fighting your own hunger. That hunger is holy. It is the signal that your soul is alive and longing for home. When you allow that hunger to lead you instead of resisting it, something shifts. The noise does not disappear instantly, but it loses authority. The thoughts do not vanish, but they soften. This is where calm begins. Not when the mind is silent, but when the soul is finally acknowledged. God meets you the moment you stop treating rest like weakness. He has been near this entire time, waiting for you to stop proving and start receiving. The silent overload that prayer doesn't fix instantly. There is a frustration that few people admit out loud. You pray sincerely, you open your heart, you say the right words, and yet your mind remains loud. The thoughts keep moving, the tension stays present, and slowly a dangerous conclusion forms inside you. You start wondering if prayer is no longer working. That thought is heavier than any distraction, but prayer was never meant to be a switch that turns the mind off instantly. Prayer is not a command that forces peace into existence. Prayer is a doorway. And sometimes, when you step through that doorway, you realize how crowded the room inside you really is. That realization does not mean prayer failed. It means prayer revealed something that was already there. You have been carrying silent overload for a long time. Emotional residue from conversations that never resolved, decisions that demanded too much from you, expectations you never agreed to but still tried to meet. Prayer does not erase that weight in seconds. Prayer brings it into the light, and light can feel uncomfortable before it feels healing. This is where many people pull away. They expect immediate relief, and when it does not arrive, they assume distance. But God is not distant in this moment. He is attentive. He sees the pressure you have normalized. He understands the layers of responsibility your mind has been holding together. And He is not disappointed by your unrest. He is patient with it. The Holy Spirit does not rush the process, because rushing is what exhausted you in the first place. Calm is not produced by intensity. Calm grows through safety, and safety develops when you stop judging yourself for not feeling better yet. The moment you release the need for instant peace, your system begins to soften. Prayer is not ineffective because your thoughts remain active. Prayer is effective because it keeps you present while God works beneath the surface. Some of the deepest healing happens quietly, without emotional fireworks. It happens when the nervous urgency fades just enough for you to breathe differently, when your shoulders lower without you noticing, when the pressure eases a fraction. That is not absence, that is progress. And it is often invisible to a mind that demands dramatic change. God does not heal you by overwhelming you. He heals you by staying with you. And staying is sometimes the miracle you do not recognize yet. If you remain here, without forcing the moment, you will begin to notice something shift, not in volume, but in tone. Your thoughts will still be present, but they will stop shouting. And when urgency loses its grip, you become able to listen again. Why constant thinking feels safe but spiritually costly? Your mind learned to think constantly because thinking felt like protection. Somewhere along the way, your thoughts became your defense system. If you stayed alert, you believed you could prevent pain. If you analyzed everything, you believed you could avoid mistakes. If you stayed ahead of every possibility, you believed you could stay in control. And for a while, that strategy worked. At least it felt like it did. Constant thinking creates the illusion of safety. It gives you the feeling that nothing will catch you off guard. But what begins as protection slowly becomes a prison. The mind was never designed to carry everything alone. It was meant to serve the heart, not replace it. When thinking becomes non-stop, it quietly pushes trust out of the center. Spiritually, this has a cost. Not because God demands mental silence, but because constant thinking leaves no room for surrender. Overthinking keeps you busy, but it also keeps you guarded. And God does not force His way past your defenses. He waits until you feel safe enough to lower them. You may not realize it, but much of your mental noise is not curiosity. It is fear wearing the mask of responsibility. Fear asks, "What if?" repeatedly. Fear revisits the past to prevent future pain. Fear rehearses outcomes that may never happen. And the more you listen to that voice, the more familiar it becomes. Eventually, It sounds like wisdom. But wisdom does not exhaust you. Wisdom brings clarity, not pressure. When thinking becomes constant, listening becomes difficult. Not because God is silent, but because the soul cannot be heard over internal vigilance. You are listening for threats instead of truth. You are scanning for danger instead of presence. And slowly, without noticing, trust is replaced by effort. God does not ask you to stop thinking. He asks you to stop relying on thinking as your source of peace. Peace does not come from predicting every outcome. It comes from knowing you are not carrying life alone. The moment you begin to loosen your grip on control, fear loses its authority. And when fear quiets, something deeper awakens. Your spirit recognizes safety differently than your mind does. The spirit feels safe when it is held, when it is guided, when it is not rushed. This is why God often feels closer when you stop trying to figure everything out. Not because thinking is wrong, but because trust opens a door thinking cannot. Constant thinking feels safe because it keeps you busy, but it costs you intimacy, and intimacy is where God speaks most clearly. When you allow yourself to rest from managing everything, you create space for something stronger than control. You create space for peace that does not depend on certainty. Stay with this. Do not rush to the next thought. There is something ahead that becomes visible only when urgency loosens its grip. The difference between God's voice and mental urgency. One of the hardest distinctions to learn is the difference between God's voice and mental urgency, because urgency speaks with confidence. It pushes, it pressures, it insists that something must be decided now, fixed now, understood now. And when you are already tired, urgency feels convincing. It sounds like responsibility, it feels like wisdom, but it carries a very specific weight. It makes your chest tight, it shortens your breath, it does not invite you, it drives you. God's voice does not behave this way. God does not rush your spirit. He does not flood you with pressure. He does not demand clarity at the cost of peace. When God speaks, even correction carries calm, even direction carries safety. His voice may challenge you, but it never overwhelms you. It does not shout to be heard, it settles to be recognized. Mental urgency often comes from fear of losing control. It tells you that if you do not act immediately, something bad will happen. It frames delay as danger. It disguises anxiety as discernment. This is why so many people confuse anxious thoughts with divine instruction. Both speak internally. Both can feel serious. But only one leaves you grounded instead of drained. God's guidance creates alignment. Mental urgency creates tension. God's voice brings a sense of steadiness, even when the message is difficult. Urgency brings agitation, even when the decision seems right. One pulls you into the present moment. The other pulls you into imagined futures. One anchors you, the other scatters you. You do not need to analyze every thought to know where it comes from. You only need to notice what it produces in you. Does it invite trust, or does it demand control? Does it bring clarity, or does it multiply pressure? God does not communicate through panic. Panic is not a spiritual signal, it is a nervous response. This is why calm is not optional when learning to hear God. Calm is not a reward you receive after obedience. Calm is the environment where obedience becomes clear. When the Holy Spirit speaks, there is room to breathe. There is space to respond. There is no threat attached to hesitation. If a thought tells you that you must decide immediately or else you will miss God, that voice is not God. God is not afraid of time. He is not threatened by your pace. He does not rush intimacy. He builds it. And intimacy requires safety. As your thoughts begin to slow, this distinction becomes easier. You will start to feel the difference between pressure and presence, between demand and invitation, between noise and truth. And once you recognize that difference, You stop reacting to every thought that sounds important. This is where discernment deepens, not through effort, but through calm awareness. God's voice becomes familiar not because it is loud, but because it is steady. And when you learn to wait for that steadiness, urgency loses its power over you. How the Holy Spirit slows time inside you. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from living internally rushed. Even when nothing urgent is happening on the outside, something inside you feels like it is always running late. Thoughts move fast, emotions overlap, decisions feel compressed, time feels tight, even in moments of rest. This is not because your life is too full. It is because your inner pace has lost its rhythm. The Holy Spirit does not begin His work by changing your circumstances. He begins by changing your speed. Not the speed of your schedule, but the speed of your inner world. When the Spirit draws near, time does not stop, but it stretches. Moments feel wider, breathing feels deeper, awareness becomes clearer. You are no longer being dragged by the next thought. This slowing is subtle, but powerful. It does not feel dramatic. It feels grounding. The Holy Spirit does not rush you into understanding. He allows your system to settle so understanding can arrive naturally. When He slows time inside you, your reactions soften. Your need to anticipate lessens. Your body begins to feel safe again. This is why calm is often the first sign of His presence. Not excitement, not emotion. Calm. Calm is the signal that you are no longer alone inside your thoughts. The Spirit regulates what has been overstimulated. He creates space between you and your urgency, and in that space you regain choice. You begin to notice things you were missing, how your shoulders were tense, how your jaw was tight, how your breath was shallow. The Holy Spirit brings awareness without accusation. He does not shame you for being tired. He restores you by slowing you down enough to feel what you have been carrying. This internal slowing is not passivity. It is alignment. When time slows inside you, you stop reacting and start responding. You no longer feel pushed by every emotion. You are guided. This is where wisdom becomes accessible again. Wisdom does not rush. It waits for clarity. God is not speaking faster than you can hear. Your inner pace has simply been too fast to receive. When the Holy Spirit slows time within you, His voice becomes easier to recognize, not because it is louder, but because there is less competition. This is how peace begins to take root. Not as a feeling you chase, but as a state you enter. When your inner world slows, your thoughts lose their dominance. They no longer lead, they follow. And the Spirit gently takes His place at the center. Do not resist this slowing. You are not falling behind. You are returning to the pace where God has always been speaking. And when you remain here, you will notice something shift. Not outside of you, but within you. The noise does not disappear, but it no longer controls the moment. This is how hearing God becomes possible again, not through urgency, but through presence. Not through effort, but through surrender to the Spirit who knows exactly how to restore your rhythm. The spiritual weight of unfinished thoughts. Some thoughts do not end. They linger, they replay. They wait in the background of your mind, unfinished, unresolved, unanswered. You move forward physically, but parts of your inner world stay stuck in conversations that never concluded, decisions that never settled, moments that never found closure. These unfinished thoughts quietly drain you. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. Each unfinished thought carries weight. It occupies attention. It pulls energy. It keeps your inner world slightly tense, even when you are resting. You may not be actively thinking about these things, but your body remembers them. Your nervous system stays alert. Your spirit stays braced. And over time, peace becomes harder to access, not because God is distant, but because your inner space is crowded. God does not compete with clutter. He waits for room. and unfinished thoughts take up room. They whisper questions without answers. They reopen emotions you thought you had buried. They demand resolution, even when resolution is not possible yet. This creates internal noise that feels spiritual, but is actually emotional residue. The Holy Spirit is gentle with this process. He does not rip thoughts away from you. He helps you release them one by one, not by forcing closure, but by restoring trust. Some things remain unanswered because you were never meant to carry them alone. Some questions are not solved by thinking harder, but by letting go deeper. Unfinished thoughts often come from moments where you felt powerless, where you needed certainty and did not receive it, where you wanted control and had to wait. Your mind kept those moments alive as a way to protect you, but protection has turned into burden, and your spirit feels it. God does not ask you to resolve every inner conversation before you hear Him. He asks you to stop rehearsing what you cannot fix. When you bring unfinished thoughts into His presence, they lose their urgency, not because they are solved, but because they are shared. This is where calm deepens. When you stop trying to mentally complete what life left open, your system relaxes. You realize you do not need full understanding to experience peace. You need trust, and trust grows when you allow God to hold what you cannot finish. As these thoughts loosen their grip, space opens. That space is not empty, it is receptive. It is quiet enough to notice God again. Not as an interruption, but as a presence that was waiting patiently beneath the noise. This is why hearing God becomes clearer when you release the need for mental closure. His voice does not compete with unresolved questions. It rises when you stop clinging to them. And when that happens, you feel lighter. Not because everything makes sense, but because you are no longer carrying everything alone. Why God often waits for emotional safety before speaking. There are moments when you are asking God to speak, but what you truly need first is to feel safe. Not physically safe, but emotionally safe. God understands the state of your inner world better than you do. He knows when your heart is guarded, when your emotions are overloaded, when your nervous system is braced for impact. And in those moments, silence is not neglect. Silence is care. God does not speak into a heart that feels threatened, because revelation without safety becomes pressure. When you are emotionally exposed, every word feels heavier. Guidance feels like demand. Direction feels like burden. God is not interested in adding weight to a heart that is already overwhelmed. He waits because He is gentle. You may interpret His silence as distance, but it is often protection. God waits until your inner world is calm enough to receive without fear. He waits until your emotions are steady enough to hold truth without distortion. He waits until your body stops reacting long enough for your spirit to listen. This waiting is not passive. It is intentional. Emotional safety is the ground where God's voice lands softly. Without it, even love sounds like pressure. Even truth feels sharp. God knows that when you are emotionally flooded, you will hear Him through the lens of fear. And fear always twists what it hears. So He waits, not to punish, but to prepare. This is why rushing yourself to hear God rarely works. You cannot force safety. Safety emerges when you feel held, not tested. When you stop performing and start resting. When you allow your emotions to settle without judgment. God speaks where the heart is open, not where it is defending itself. Jesus never forced revelation on people who were not ready to receive it. He created safety first. He listened. He stayed. He asked questions. He allowed space. The same is true now. God stays close while you stabilize. He remains present while you breathe again. And when your emotional walls soften, His voice finds its way in naturally. You do not need to prove readiness. You do not need to calm yourself perfectly. You only need to stop fighting your own humanity. God is not waiting for you to be strong. He is waiting for you to feel safe enough to trust. When emotional safety returns, something shifts. Your reactions slow, your fear quiets. Your heart opens, and in that opening God speaks, not loudly, not urgently, but clearly, because clarity is always born from safety. If you are in a season of silence, ask yourself this gently: do I feel safe inside right now? If the answer is no, God is not far. He is closer than ever, helping you settle so that when He speaks, His voice will heal instead of overwhelm. The Holy Spirit's role in ordering your inner world. When your inner world feels chaotic, the problem is not a lack of intelligence or faith. It is a lack of order. Thoughts overlap, emotions interrupt each other, desires pull in opposite directions, and the more you try to manage it all, the more disorganized it becomes. This is where the Holy Spirit works, in a way that is often misunderstood. The Holy Spirit does not bring order by suppressing what you feel. He brings order by arranging it. He does not silence your thoughts by force. He places them where they belong. He separates what needs attention from what needs release. He teaches your inner world how to breathe again. Order is not control. Order is alignment. When the Spirit moves within you, things stop competing for dominance. Emotions no longer shout over each other. Thoughts no longer demand immediate response. You regain a sense of internal hierarchy. What matters rises. What does not loses urgency. This is why clarity often arrives quietly, not as a sudden insight, but as a sense of inner coherence. You feel less scattered. You stop jumping between concerns. Your attention becomes steady. The Holy Spirit creates this steadiness by restoring order where chaos has been normalized. God does not expect you to organize yourself before He enters. He enters to organize. You do not need to clean your inner house before inviting Him in. He is not offended by the mess. He is skilled at restoration, and He works gently, respecting your pace. When the Holy Spirit orders your inner world, your thoughts become less reactive. Your emotions become less volatile. You are no longer driven by what feels loudest. You are guided by what feels true. This is how peace becomes sustainable. Not because problems disappear, but because your inner world is no longer overwhelmed by them. You may notice this order returning in simple ways. You pause before reacting. You feel grounded in moments that once triggered you. You sense clarity without needing to analyze it. These are signs that the Spirit is working beneath the surface. Order makes hearing God possible again. Not because His voice was missing, but because the inner noise has been rearranged. When everything finds its place, there is room to listen, and listening becomes natural, not forced. Do not rush this process. Order takes time because healing takes care. The Holy Spirit is not in a hurry. He is restoring you from the inside out. And as He does, you will find that God's voice becomes familiar again, not as an interruption, but as the steady center of your inner world. When calm becomes the language heaven uses, there comes a moment when you realize that calm is not just something you feel, it is something you receive. Calm becomes a message before it becomes a sensation. It arrives quietly without explanation, and yet it communicates something deep. It tells you that you are not alone. It tells you that you are being held. It tells you that God is near. Heaven does not always speak through words. Sometimes it speaks through atmosphere, through a sudden easing inside your chest, through a slowing of your breath, through a stillness that settles without effort. This calm is not emotional numbness. It is awareness without tension, and it is one of the clearest ways God reassures your heart. Many people wait to hear God before they rest. But often, rest is how God speaks first. Calm prepares the heart to receive truth without resistance. It removes fear from the conversation. It creates safety where revelation can land gently. When calm arrives, it is not the end of the encounter. It is the beginning. This is why calm cannot be manufactured. You cannot force it through discipline or thinking. Calm is given. It is the Holy Spirit's way of saying you can stop striving, you can stop guarding, you can stop proving God is here. When calm becomes the language heaven uses, your thoughts no longer need to be silenced. They naturally quiet. They lose urgency because something stronger has taken their place. Presence. The moment presence fills the space, noise loses power. You may notice that during calm, answers are not immediately provided, and that is intentional. Calm is not meant to satisfy curiosity, it is meant to restore trust. When trust is restored, guidance becomes clearer later. God is more interested in aligning your heart than explaining every detail. This is why calm often comes before clarity. God speaks peace first, then direction. When you learn to recognize calm as communication, you stop chasing dramatic signs. You begin to notice subtle confirmations, alignment, stability, assurance without explanation. Calm tells you that you are safe to listen again, that your heart is ready, that your inner world is open. And when you remain in that calm without rushing to fill it, God's voice becomes unmistakable. He does not need to raise his volume. Calm has already opened the way, and in that quiet, you realize something profound. God has been speaking all along. You were simply learning the language, letting go of mental resistance without losing discernment. One of the deepest fears you carry is the fear of letting your guard down. You worry that if you stop thinking so much, you will miss something important. That if you relax mentally, you will lose clarity. That if you release control, confusion will take over. This fear keeps you resisting calm even when you long for it. Mental resistance often disguises itself as discernment. It tells you that staying alert is wisdom, that questioning everything is maturity, that relaxing is risky. But discernment does not come from tension. It comes from alignment. Discernment grows clearer when the mind is settled, not when it is braced. Letting go of resistance does not mean turning your mind off. It means stopping the internal fight. You are not asked to abandon awareness. You are invited to soften it. When you release resistance, your attention becomes more precise, not less. You stop reacting to every thought and start observing them, and observation brings clarity. The Holy Spirit does not remove discernment when you surrender. He refines it. He filters what deserves your attention and what does not. When you stop clenching your thoughts, wisdom flows more naturally. You begin to sense what aligns and what does not without overanalyzing it. This is where many people misunderstand surrender. They think surrender means passivity, but surrender is actually cooperation. You stop forcing your way through confusion and allow God to guide you from within. Your mind becomes receptive instead of defensive, and receptivity sharpens perception. When resistance fades, fear loses its influence. You are no longer scanning for danger. You are listening for truth. This shift changes everything. Thoughts that once felt urgent lose their power. Emotions that once overwhelmed you settle. You feel grounded instead of exposed. God never asks you to sacrifice wisdom for peace. He offers peace as the foundation of wisdom. When your inner world is calm, discernment becomes steady. You no longer need to hurry decisions. You feel when something is right. You sense when something is off. And you trust that sensing without panic. This is how you let go without losing yourself. You release resistance, not awareness. You surrender tension, not responsibility. And in that release, you discover that clarity was never dependent on control. It was waiting for trust. Stay here for a moment. Feel the difference between resistance and readiness. One exhausts you. The other restores you, and restoration is where God continues to speak. The moment your thoughts stop fighting for attention. There is a subtle moment when something shifts inside you. It is not dramatic, it does not announce itself, but you feel it. Your thoughts stop pushing each other forward. They stop competing for dominance. The inner pressure that kept you alert begins to dissolve, and for the first time in a while, you are not being pulled in multiple directions at once. This moment does not come from effort. It comes from allowance. You did not silence your thoughts. You simply stopped feeding them urgency. When urgency fades, thoughts lose their need to be loud. They no longer fight for attention because attention is no longer scarce. You begin to notice space between thoughts, not emptiness, but openness. In that space, you are present. You are aware without strain. You are listening without forcing. This is where awareness deepens. Not by focusing harder, but by relaxing into the moment. When thoughts stop fighting for attention, your body responds, your breathing slows, your muscles soften, your nervous system shifts out of defense. You feel grounded in yourself again, and grounding creates the conditions where God's presence feels near, not distant. This is why God's voice often becomes clearer in these moments, not because he suddenly arrives, but because the competition quiets. His presence has always been steady. It was the internal conflict that made it hard to notice. In this state, you are no longer reacting to every mental impulse. You are choosing where your attention rests. This choice brings peace, not the absence of thought, but the absence of struggle. And struggle is what kept you from listening. You may expect God to speak loudly in this space, but often he speaks through knowing rather than words. A sense of rightness, a gentle clarity, a reassurance that settles without explanation. This is not imagination, this is recognition. The more you allow this state to remain, the more familiar it becomes. You realize that peace is not fragile. It does not disappear when thoughts return. It stays beneath them, steady and available. This is the moment where hearing God feels natural again, not forced, not strained, simply present. And when you stop fighting your thoughts, you discover that you were never meant to win that battle. You were meant to outgrow it. Recognizing God's presence before hearing his words. Most people are listening for words when God is offering presence. They wait for a message, a sentence, a direction, while missing the quiet assurance that arrives first. God often makes himself known before he makes himself heard. And when you learn to recognize that presence, hearing his words becomes easier. Presence feels different from thought. It is steady. It does not argue. It does not rush. It does not explain itself. Presence simply is. You may feel it as a grounding sensation, a sense of being accompanied, a calm awareness that you are not alone inside your own mind. This awareness is not emotional excitement, it is recognition. When God's presence fills the space, your inner world aligns. You feel centered, you feel anchored. Even without instruction, you feel guided. This is because presence restores trust before direction is given. God knows that guidance without trust creates fear, so he establishes closeness first. Many people overlook this moment because it feels subtle. They are waiting for something dramatic, but God does not need spectacle to confirm his nearness. He speaks through familiarity, through peace that does not depend on understanding, through a sense of belonging that quiets the need for constant answers. This is why Jesus often asked people to follow him before explaining everything. Relationship came first, direction followed. The same pattern applies here. When you rest in God's presence, your heart opens, and an open heart hears more clearly. You do not need to strain to hear words. You need to stay present long enough for trust to settle. When trust settles, guidance flows naturally. You begin to sense what aligns and what does not. Decisions feel less heavy. Questions feel less urgent. Recognizing God's presence changes the way you listen. You stop demanding immediate clarity. You become receptive, and receptivity allows truth to arrive at the right pace. God speaks when the heart is ready, not when the mind insists. Stay with the presence you feel. Do not rush past it looking for information. This is where intimacy forms, and intimacy is the language God uses before he uses words. Stay in this stillness. This is where God finds you. Do not rush away from this moment. The stillness you feel now is not empty. It is full of presence, full of safety, full of God. This is not a pause between thoughts. This is not a break before life resumes. This is the place where God meets you when you stop running inside yourself. You have spent so much time trying to reach God through effort, through words, through understanding. But God has been reaching you through stillness, through calm, through presence. He does not need you to climb toward him. He comes to you when you finally stop carrying everything alone. This stillness is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is not giving up. It is surrender without fear. It is trust without explanation. It is the moment you stop asking God to speak louder and start allowing your inner world to become quiet enough to listen. Here, you are not being evaluated. You are not being corrected. You are not being rushed. You are being held. God does not meet you in your performance. He meets you in your availability. And availability looks like this: calm, open, present. If you listen closely, you may notice that the urge to figure everything out has softened. The pressure to decide has eased. The fear of missing something has loosened its grip. That is not accidental. That is alignment. That is what happens when God becomes the center instead of your thoughts. This is where hearing God becomes natural again, not because answers suddenly appear, but because trust has returned. You realize you do not need to hear everything right now. You only need to stay connected. God is not in a hurry, and neither should you be. Jesus never chased the noise of the world. He withdrew into stillness. He listened. He rested in the Father's presence. And from that place, clarity came, strength came, direction came. The same invitation stands before you now. Stay here a little longer. Let this calm settle deeper. Let this presence anchor you. You are not waiting for God. God has been waiting for you in this stillness. And now that you are here, you will begin to notice something profound. God's voice does not need to break the silence. It flows through it.